I always believed the worst moment of my life was the second my car spun off the interstate in the rain. I was wrong. The true impact happened 4 days later when I realized my mother had not just left the hospital, but had quietly walked out of my existence. She left me drowning in silence until my grandfather arrived with a simple notebook and made the one decision that would force her to look at us again. The rain on the interstate outside Cedar Ridge was not a warning. It was a wall. I remember the sound of the tires losing their grip on the asphalt, a terrible and hollow noise that felt like the earth being ripped open, and then the world turned sideways. The guardrail, which I had passed 1,000 times on my commute to the design studio, became the only thing that existed. Then came the crunch of metal folding in on itself, the shattering of safety glass, and a silence so loud it felt heavy. I woke up in a room that smelled of antiseptic and floor wax. My body felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else, someone who was currently being crushed by a pile of stones. My right leg was elevated and wrapped in layers of casting material that looked alien against the white sheets. My ribs throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache that timed itself perfectly with my heartbeat. 33 years of life, of building a career, of paying my own rent, and navigating the quiet separation from my husband, had vanished in 3 seconds. I was no longer Leah Cox, the independent graphic designer. I was a patient. I was a case number. I was broken, and sitting in the vinyl chair next to the bed, looking perfectly put together in a cream-colored cardigan and pressed slacks, was my mother. Marianne Cox did not look like she had been crying. She looked like she was managing a crisis, which was her favorite state of being. She had a notepad on her knee and her phone in her hand. When she saw my eyes open, she did not rush to hug me. She stood up, smoothed the front of her pants, and offered me a tight, terrified smile. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was brittle. "I have been talking to the doctors. It is going to be a long road. Leah, a very long road. But I am here. I will handle everything." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, scraping against itself like sandpaper. I asked for water. She poured it from a plastic pitcher, her hand shaking just enough to spill a few drops on the tray table. She wiped it up immediately with a napkin. "Don't try to talk too much," she said. "You have a concussion. The doctor said you need rest. I have already called your office. I told them you would be out for at least 6 weeks, maybe more. I told them not to call you." Panic flared in my chest, sharp and hot. I tried to sit up, but the pain in my ribs slammed me back down. 6 weeks? I could not be out for 6 weeks. I had deadlines. I had the impulsive campaign launch. "I need my phone," I whispered. "No," Marianne said. She said it firmly, the way one speaks to a toddler reaching for a hot stove. "You do not need your phone. You need to heal. I have the phone. It is safe in my purse. I am screening the calls so you do not get upset." I looked at her, really looked at her. Her blonde hair was sprayed into an immovable helmet of perfection. Her makeup was flawless. Though the powder settled into the fine lines around her mouth, she looked like the hero of the story, the devoted mother standing guard. But there was something in her eyes that did not match the softness of her sweater. It was a darting, anxious look. She kept glancing at the door, as if she were afraid someone would walk in and ask her a question she did not know the answer to. Over the next 4 days, that anxiety sharpened. Every time a nurse came in with a clipboard, Marianne was there to intercept it. She signed forms with a flourish, her pen moving fast. When I asked what she was signing, she waved her hand dismissively. "Just administrative nonsense," she said. "HIPAA forms, insurance coordination, you know how they are. Leah, they want a signature for every breath you take. I am just saving you the trouble." On the 3rd day, a man in a gray suit knocked on the doorframe. He introduced himself as the adjuster from the other driver's insurance company. He looked tired and held a thick file folder. "Ms. Cox," he said, looking at me. "I just need to go over a few details regarding the accident report and the liability assessment." Before I could answer, Marianne was on her feet. She moved between the bed and the door, physically blocking his view of me. "She is not up for this," she snapped. Can you not see she is in pain? I am handling her affairs. You can speak to me in the hall. The adjuster looked at me over her shoulder. I wanted to tell him to stay. I wanted to hear what he had to say. I wanted to know if the other driver was okay. But the medication was a heavy fog in my brain, making my thoughts slow and sticky. I felt weak. It was easier to let her handle it. It was easier to let her be the mother she wanted to be. That is fine, the adjuster said, stepping back. We can talk outside. Marianne followed him out, pulling the heavy door shut behind her. Through the small glass window, I watched them. Marianne was talking fast, her hands moving in sharp, chopping gestures. The adjuster was nodding, writing something down. At one point, Marianne reached out and touched his arm, a gesture of familiarity that seemed out of place. She looked intense, desperate. When she came back in 10 minutes later, she looked flushed. Everything is fine, she said, sitting down and opening a magazine. I told him we would be in touch. You do not need to worry about the money. Leah, I am taking care of the bills. I am taking care of everything. But she would not look me in the eye. When I was discharged, the reality of my new life crashed down on me. I could not walk without a walker. I could not drive. I could not even shower without help. My apartment, a second-floor duplex with a steep staircase, was impossible. Marianne insisted I stay at her place for a few days, but the tension there was suffocating. She paced the floors at night. She took phone calls in the bathroom with the water running. After 3 days, I insisted on going back to my own home. I told her I could manage if I hired a visiting nurse for the mornings. I just wanted my own bed. I wanted my own quiet. Marianne drove me home in silence. She helped me up the stairs, her breath coming in short huffs of effort. She set me up on the sofa with a stack of pillows, arranged my medication bottles on the coffee table, and filled the fridge with 3 days' worth of pre-made salads. I will come by tomorrow, she said, standing by the door with her keys in her hand. I have to run some errands. The bank, the post office, but I will be back to check on you. Thank you. Mom, I said. I truly felt grateful. Despite her intensity, she had been there. She had shown up. She looked at me then, and her face did not soften. It looked tight. You have to get better. Leah, she said, you cannot live like this. It is too much. Then she walked out. I did not see her the next day. I called her at noon. It went to voicemail. I called her at 4 in the afternoon. Voicemail. I texted her. Need a refill on the water when you come over. Love you. She did not reply. By the second day, the silence was a physical weight. I was running low on pain medication. The salads were wilting. I had to drag myself to the bathroom using the walker, biting my lip until it bled to keep from screaming as my ribs shifted. I called her again and again. My mind started to spiral. Had she been in an accident? Was she sick? I called my aunt, her sister. No. I spoke to Marianne this morning. My aunt said, sounding confused. She said she was busy with some financial planning. She said you were doing great. Leah, she told me you wanted some space to heal. Space? I was trapped on a beige sofa in Cedar Ridge with a throbbing leg and an empty Brita pitcher. On the third day of silence, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from my mother. I fumbled for it, relief washing over me so hard I almost cried. The message was 3 sentences long. I cannot come over today, or this week. You are 33 years old. Leah, and you are becoming too dependent on me. You need to be strong and figure this out on your own. I stared at the screen, the words blurred. Too dependent? I had been in a car accident. I had broken bones. I had not asked for money. I had not asked for charity. I had asked for a ride to physical therapy. I had asked for my mother. I called her immediately. It went straight to voicemail. She had blocked me. Or she had turned her phone off. I sat there in the dim light of my living room, the pain in my leg throbbing in time with the shock. It felt like a second impact. The car crash had broken my body. But this text message broke my reality. My mother, who had hovered over the doctors, who had fought the insurance adjuster, who had promised to handle everything, had just walked away. I was alone, or I thought I was. 2 hours later, there was a heavy, rhythmic knocking on my front door. Not a timid knock, a confident one. I shouted that the door was unlocked. I could not get up to open it. The door swung open, and my grandfather filled the frame. Gordon Cox was a man built of oak and silence. He was in his late 70s, but he still moved with the steady, deliberate power of someone who had worked construction his entire life. He wore a flannel shirt tucked into work pants, and a baseball cap from a hardware store that had closed 10 years ago. He did not say hello. He did not rush over to coo at me. He stepped inside, closed the door gently, and looked around the room. His eyes took in the empty water pitcher, the scattering of pill bottles, and the way I was slumped against the pillows. He walked into the kitchen. I heard the tap turn on. I heard the refrigerator open. "Grandpa?" I said. My voice cracked. He came back into the living room with a fresh glass of water and a plate of toast. He set them down on the coffee table. Then he pulled a small, spiral-bound notebook from his shirt pocket and clicked a pen. "Marianne is not coming," he said. His voice was gravel, low and steady. "I know," I said. I felt the tears hot on my cheeks. "She sent me a text." "I know," he said again. He did not sound angry. He sounded resigned. He opened the notebook. "What time is your next pain pill?" 4 o'clock. I said. He wrote it down. "When is the physical therapy appointment?" "Tuesday, at 10. He wrote that down too. "Do you have groceries?" "No." He nodded. He put the pen away. "I'm going to the store. I will be back in 40 minutes. Eat the toast." He turned to leave. "Grandpa," I said, "why is she doing this?" Gordon stopped. He looked at the floor, then at the door, then finally at me. His eyes were gray and unreadable. "Your mother has her own way of handling fear, Leah," he said. "It is not a good way, but right now, we are not going to worry about her. We are going to worry about getting you walking." He left. He did not hug me. He did not tell me everything was going to be okay. He just brought me toast and wrote down the time. And somehow, that saved me. For the next week, Gordon was my clock. He arrived at 8 in the morning. He made coffee. He helped me get to the bathroom by offering a strong, steady arm that did not shake. He drove me to my appointments in his truck, which smelled of sawdust and old mints. He sat in the waiting room while the therapist bent my knee, reading a newspaper and never looking at his phone. He never spoke about Marianne. If I brought her up, he would just grunt or find a sudden task that needed doing in the kitchen. But the silence was not empty. It was filled with small observations. One afternoon, a friend from work, Tessa Hale, stopped by. Tessa was the office manager at the design studio, a woman who noticed everything and forgot nothing. She brought a basket of muffins and a gossip update about the new client accounts. Gordon was in the kitchen, fixing a loose hinge on a cabinet door. Tessa lowered her voice, leaning in close to the sofa. "I saw your mom yesterday," Tessa said. My stomach tightened. "Where?" "Downtown," Tessa said. "Coming out of the First National Bank, the big one on Main Street." "Oh," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "She probably had errands." "Yeah," Tessa said. She looked unsure, but Leah, it was weird. She was carrying this thick envelope, manila, stuffed full, and she looked spooky. Spooky? She looked like she was making a getaway. Tessa said she was wearing sunglasses, and it was cloudy. She walked right past me. I said hello, and she looked right through me. She had this look on her face like she was saying, "Not my problem anymore." It gave me the creeps. I stared at Tessa, the image of my mother, sunglasses on, clutching a thick envelope while I lay here unable to walk. Made no sense. Marianne did not have money troubles. She worked as a consultant. She lived in a nice condo. What was she doing at the bank with a stuffed envelope? After Tessa left, Gordon came into the living room. He had fixed the hinge. "What did she say?" Gordon asked. "She saw Mom." I said, "At the bank, with a big envelope." Gordon stood very still. He looked out the window at the rain that had started to fall again. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he pulled out his notebook and made a note. The next day, I asked Gordon to bring in the mail. I had been expecting a letter from the insurance company about the approval for my next round of therapy. He brought in a small stack, a catalog, a utility bill, a flyer for a pizza place. "That is it?" I asked. "That is all that was in the box," Gordon said. I frowned. It had been 2 weeks since the accident. I should have had bills, explanations of benefits, letters from the hospital. My mailbox should have been overflowing with the administrative debris of a catastrophe. I called the insurance company. I put it on speaker so I could hold the ice pack on my knee. After 10 minutes of hold music, a representative came on the line. "I am calling to check on the status of my claim," I said, "and I have not received any correspondence about the therapy approval." There was a typing sound on the other end. "Ms. Cox," the representative said, "we sent that approval letter out 4 days ago. I did not get it." I said, "Let me check the address on file." The woman said, "We have you listed at P. Box 404, Cedar Ridge." I froze. "I do not have a P.O. box," I said. "My address is 412 Elm Street." The typing stopped. "Ma'am, our records show a change of address request was processed on the 16th. That was the day after your accident. Who requested it?" I asked. My voice was shaking. "It was submitted through the online portal." The woman said, "We can switch it back." But all the initial notices, including the billing summaries and the settlement opening letter, went to the P.O. box. I hung up. I looked at Gordon. He was sitting in the armchair, watching me. His face was like stone. "She changed my address." I said, "She changed it the day after the crash, while I was in surgery." Gordon did not look surprised. He looked tired. "Why would she do that?" I asked. "Why would she want my mail?" "Control," Gordon said softly. "Or she does not want you to see something." I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. It was worse than the physical pain. It was the feeling of the ground shifting under me again. Just like on the highway. "I need to see my hospital records." I said, "I need to see what she signed." I called the hospital billing department next. I demanded an itemized statement. I wanted to see every charge, every insurance code. "I am sorry, Ms. Cox," the billing clerk said. "We already released the full itemized file to your family representative last week. We cannot issue a duplicate without a new request form and a processing fee, which takes 10 business days." "My family representative?" I asked. "Yes," the clerk said. "Marianne Cox. She came in person to pick them up. She had the signed release authorization on file." I closed my eyes. I pictured Marianne in the hospital room, the stack of papers, the pen moving fast. Just administrative nonsense. HIPAA forms. I never signed a release for her to take my records. I said. The clerk sounded defensive. "Ms. Cox, we have the signature right here. It is dated the day after your admission." I ended the call. I felt sick. I dropped the phone on the cushion beside me. Gordon leaned forward. He rested his elbows on his knees and clasped his large, rough hands together. He looked me right in the eye, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something sharp behind his gray gaze. It was not anger. It was a hunter's focus. "Leah," he said. His voice was very quiet. "Think back to the hospital. You were on heavy pain meds, morphine, Dilaudid. You were in and out." I nodded. "It was all a blur." "Did you sign anything you do not remember?" he asked. "Did she put a pen in your hand and tell you it was for something else?" I tried to reach back into the memory. I saw the white ceiling. I heard the beep of the monitor. I saw Marianne's face, close to mine, smiling that tight, terrified smile. "Sign here. Honey, it is just for the insurance. It is just so I can help you." I felt the pen in my hand. My fingers were numb. I scribbled something because I just wanted her to stop talking so I could sleep. "I think so," I whispered. "I think I signed whatever she gave me." Gordon sat back. He let out a long, slow breath. "She has the mail," he said. "She has the medical records. She blocked the insurance adjuster. And now she is gone." He stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the street, at the quiet neighborhood of Cedar Ridge. He looked like a man measuring the structural integrity of a house that was about to collapse. "This is not just about her being overwhelmed," Gordon said. He turned back to me. "You do not set up a P.O. box because you are stressed. You do not intercept mail because you are sad. You do this because you are hiding something." He put his notebook in his pocket. He walked over to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. His grip was warm and solid. "I am not going to make you confront her yet. Leah," he said, "you are not strong enough for that fight. You need to heal." "But Grandpa," I said, "what is she doing?" "I do not know," he said, "but I am going to find out. I am going to find out exactly what was moved, what was signed, and what was hidden, because the timing is too precise to be a coincidence. And I promise you this, Leah, I will not let you drown in her mess." He went to the kitchen to start the kettle for tea. I sat on the sofa, listening to the water boil, and for the first time since the crash, I felt a different kind of fear. I wasn't afraid of the pain anymore. I was afraid of who my mother really was, and I was afraid of what my grandfather was going to find in the silence she had left behind. Recovery was not a straight line. It was a series of jagged peaks and valleys, days where I could walk to the mailbox without wincing, followed by days where the dull, grinding ache in my hip made it impossible to think. I spent my mornings at the physical therapy center, a large room that smelled of rubber mats and sweat, learning how to trust my own leg again. My therapist, a cheerful woman named Sarah, told me I was making excellent progress. She said my range of motion was returning faster than she expected, but while my body was knitting itself back together, my life outside of my skin felt like it was unraveling. The silence from my mother, Marianne, had hardened into a permanent state. She was simply gone. It was a ghosting so complete it felt professional. But her absence did not mean she was inactive. It was quite the opposite. Marianne was like a poltergeist, unseen, but throwing furniture around in the other rooms of my life. It started with the copays. I went to pick up a prescription for a muscle relaxer at the pharmacy counter. The pharmacist, a man I had known for years, gave me an apologetic look. "That will be $45. Leah," he said. I frowned. "It is usually 10, I said. "My insurance covers the rest." He turned the screen toward me. "It says here that you have reached your limit on the initial coverage tier. The system is kicking back the claim as out-of-network for the prescriber." I stared at him. The prescriber was Dr. Evans. He had been my primary care physician for 5 years. He was definitely in network. I paid the $45 because I needed the medication to sleep, but the unease settled in my stomach like a stone. When I got home, I logged into my health insurance portal, or I tried to. My password did not work. I tried the reset option. The security question popped up. "What was the name of your first pet?" I typed in Buster. Incorrect answer. I stared at the screen. Buster was the golden retriever we had when I was 7. I had set that security question myself 3 years ago. My hands started to shake, not from pain, but from a sudden, sharp realization. I tried whiskers, spot, shadow. Account locked for security purposes. I sat back in my chair. The glow of the laptop screen illuminating the dark living room. Someone had changed my password, and they had changed the security answer. There was only one person who knew my history well enough to guess my answers, or who felt entitled enough to change them to something only she would know. The next day, a letter arrived. It was the only one that had slipped through the mail forwarding crack, likely because it was sent via a courier service that required a signature, and Gordon happened to be there to sign for it. It was from a legal mediation firm in the city. "Dear Ms. Cox, this letter is to confirm the pre-settlement conference scheduled for the 14th of next month regarding case number 492. Please ensure all financial affidavits are submitted by the 10th. I read it twice, then a third time. I had not hired a lawyer. I had not scheduled a settlement conference. I had not even finished my medical treatment yet, which meant settling now would be financial suicide. If I settled before I knew the full extent of my long-term care needs, I would be signing away my future coverage. Gordon was in the kitchen, washing the dishes from our lunch. He moved with a slow, methodical rhythm. Wash, rinse, dry, rack, Grandpa, I said. He turned off the water. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked into the living room. He saw the letter in my hand. He did not ask what it was. He just sat down on the ottoman opposite me and waited. She scheduled a settlement conference. I said, my voice sounded thin. She is trying to close the claim. Gordon took the letter. He put on his reading glasses, the wire-rimmed ones that sat low on his nose. He read it silently. Then he folded it very neatly, lining up the edges with precision, and placed it on the coffee table. Get your coat. Leah, he said. Where are we going? To see a friend of mine, he said. You do not need a mother right now. You need a lawyer. Evelyn Marr's office was not in one of the glass and steel towers downtown. It was in a converted brick house on the edge of the historic district. Sandwiched between a bakery and a florist, the waiting room smelled of lemon polish and old paper. There were no sleek modern chairs or abstract art. Instead, there were heavy oak bookcases filled with actual law books, their spines cracked and faded. Evelyn herself was a woman who seemed to be made of sharp angles and energy. She was small, perhaps in her 60s, with steel-gray hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that missed nothing. She did not treat me like a victim. She did not offer me tea or sympathy. She shook my hand with a grip that was surprisingly strong and pointed to a leather chair. Gordon tells me things are moving without your permission. Evelyn said. She sat behind a massive desk that was piled high with files. Yet she seemed to know exactly where everything was. I handed her the letter and the printout of my locked insurance account. My mother. I said, I think she is trying to settle my accident claim, but I do not understand why or how. Evelyn adjusted her glasses and read the documents. She hummed, a low, skeptical sound in her throat. The how is easy, Evelyn said. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. You were incapacitated. She is your mother, in the eyes of a busy claims adjuster or a hospital administrator. A mother with a confident voice and a handful of personal details looks exactly like an authorized representative. People do not like to question maternal concern. Leah, it makes them feel rude. Your mother knows that. She tapped the letter. But settling a claim this early? That is not maternal concern. That is a cash grab, or a panic move, usually both. She turned to her computer. It was an older model, clunky and beige, but she typed with blinding speed. I am going to make a few calls, Evelyn said. I am not going to sue anyone yet. I am just going to ask questions. I am going to be the annoying lawyer who wants to see the paperwork. Is that all right with you? Yes, I said. I felt a wave of relief so strong it made me dizzy. Please. Gordon sat in the corner, his hat in his lap. He did not speak. He let me handle it. He let me be the client. Evelyn put the phone on speaker. She dialed the number for the mediation firm listed on the letter. This is Evelyn Marr, representing Leah Cox. She said when the receptionist answered. Her voice was pleasant, but had a core of iron. I am calling regarding the conference scheduled for the 14th. I need to verify the contact information you have on file for my client. We seem to have a communication disconnect. There was a pause. Then the receptionist came back on. Yes, Ms. Marr, we have the primary contact email as mcox, trust, management@webmail.com. I looked at Evelyn. I shook my head. That was not my email. That was not even Marianne's regular email. And the physical address? Evelyn asked. P.O. Box 404, Cedar Ridge. Thank you, Evelyn said. And who requested this conference? The notes say the request came from the claimant's representative, Marianne Cox, citing financial hardship and a need for expedited resolution. Evelyn hung up. She looked at me. Financial hardship? She repeated. Leah, are you in financial hardship? I have savings. I said, the medical bills are piling up, but I'm not destitute. I can pay my rent. Evelyn leaned forward. Her eyes were serious. She has positioned herself as the gatekeeper. Leah, She created a dedicated email address, Trust Management, which sounds official but is just a free account she controls. She routed all the settlement offers there. The insurer thinks they are talking to you, or at least to someone you authorized. She is likely telling them you are desperate for cash and willing to take a lowball offer just to end it. Why? I asked. The question felt childish, but I could not stop asking it. Why would she steal from me? Evelyn glanced at Gordon. Gordon looked back at her, his face grim. She might not see it as stealing. Evelyn said, she might see it as borrowing. If she gets the check, maybe she plans to give you half. Maybe she plans to invest it. Or maybe she owes someone money, and you are the quickest way to pay it back. The thought made my stomach drop. We need to stop the bleeding. Evelyn said, I am going to draft a revocation of authority. We will send it to the hospital, the insurance company, the bank, and this mediation firm. It states clearly that Marianne Cox has zero authority to speak for you, sign for you, or negotiate for you. We will require all future communications to come through this office. She pushed a notepad toward me. It feels aggressive, Evelyn said, softening her tone for the first time. I know she is your mother. It feels like you are declaring war. But you are not. You are just locking your front door because someone keeps walking in and taking the furniture. You are allowed to lock your door. Leah, I picked up the pen. My hand trembled. But I signed my name. That night, I tried to call Marianne again. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to give her one chance to explain before Evelyn's letters landed on her doorstep like grenades. To my surprise, she answered on the second ring. Leah, she said. She sounded breathless, as if she were walking fast. I cannot talk long. I am in the middle of a crisis. Mom, I said, I received a letter about a settlement conference. Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. That was supposed to come to me, she said. Her voice dropped, becoming icy. Why do you have that? Because it is addressed to me, I said. Why did you schedule it? I am not ready to settle. My leg is still... Oh, stop it, Marianne snapped. The venom in her voice was so sudden it physically recoiled me. You are being so dramatic. Leah, you always have been. My leg, my pain, my trauma. Do you have any idea what kind of pressure I am under? I am trying to save us. Save us? I asked. Save us from what? You would not understand, she said. You are too focused on your own little world. I have bigger problems than your physical therapy schedule. I am trying to ensure there is something left for you when this is all over. You changed my email, I said. You changed my password. You are impersonating me. I am managing you, she shouted. Because you are not capable of making the hard choices right now. You are unstable. Everyone knows it. Then she hung up. I sat there, the phone warm against my ear. Unstable. A few minutes later, my phone pinged. It was a text from my Aunt Carol, Marianne's older sister. We were not close, but we exchanged Christmas cards. Hi, Leah. Just thinking of you. Marianne mentioned you were having a really hard time mentally after the crash and were refusing visitors. Just wanted you to know we love you and hope you get the help you need. Do not be ashamed of the counseling. I stared at the screen. Marianne was not just hiding. She was rewriting the narrative. She was telling the family I was having a breakdown. It was brilliant, in a twisted way. If I accused her of theft later, she could tell everyone it was just my paranoia, a symptom of my instability. Poor Leah. The accident scrambled her brain. She turned on her own mother. I felt a flash of rage so pure it burned. I typed a reply to Aunt Carol. I am fine. Aunt Carol, my leg is broken, not my mind. Mom is lying. I deleted it. I could not start a war over text message. Not yet. 2 days later, Tessa came by again. She brought Thai takeout and a look of serious concern. She sat on the floor by the coffee table, opening the cartons of pad Thai. So, I have been keeping my ears open, Tessa said. Like you asked. And? I asked. I went to that coffee shop on 3rd Street yesterday. Tessa said. The one near the old library. Your mom was there. Was she alone? No, Tessa said. She was with a guy. I have never seen him before. Younger than her. Maybe 40? Slicked back hair. Expensive suit. But it looked shiny. Like cheap expensive. I shook my head. I did not know anyone like that. They were arguing. Tessa said. I sat at the table behind them. I pretended to be on my laptop. She was keeping her voice down, but she was intense. She kept saying, I told you I would pay it back. I just need a few more weeks. The liquidity is coming. Liquidity. I whispered, my settlement. Yeah, Tessa said. And then the guy said something that made her really mad. He said, the clock is ticking. Marianne, and she slammed her hand on the table and hissed, stop calling my father. If you call him again, the whole deal falls apart. I froze. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth. Stop calling my father. She was talking about Gordon. Tessa left an hour later. I waited until Gordon came in from the porch, where he had been whittling a piece of cedar wood. It was his way of thinking. Grandpa, I said. He looked up. The shavings fell from his apron. Tessa saw Mom again. I said, she was arguing with a man about a debt. She told him to stop calling you. Gordon set the knife down. He did not look surprised. He looked weary. He took off his hat and ran a hand through his thinning white hair. Has someone been calling you? I asked. Gordon sighed. He walked over to the fireplace and sat heavily on the hearth. A man called the house 3 times last week, Gordon said, asking for Marianne. Said he was an associate of hers. I told him she did not live here. He said, you tell her we know where her family lives. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because you have enough to worry about, Gordon said. And because I thought I could handle it. Who is he? I do not know, Gordon said. But this is not the first time. Leah. I looked at him. What do you mean? Gordon looked at his hands. They were scarred from years of work, strong and capable. Your mother has a history, he said quietly, of getting into things she cannot control. 10 years ago, before you moved back here, she got involved in an investment scheme. She lost a lot of money, not just hers. She borrowed from people she shouldn't have. And you helped her? I paid them, Gordon said. His voice was flat. I paid them $40,000 to go away. I depleted your grandmother's rainy day fund. I did it on one condition. I told Marianne, no more lies, no more dragging this family into your private messes. If you get in trouble again, you come to me first. You do not hide it. He looked up at me, and his eyes were full of a deep, aching disappointment. She promised, he said. She looked me in the eye and swore on your grandmother's grave. And now, here we are. She is doing it again, and she is using you to cover her tracks. He stood up. He looked older than I had ever seen him. I will not do it again. Leah, he said, I will not pay her ransom. I learned the hard way that saving her only teaches her that she does not have to save herself. But I need to know how deep this goes. The next week was a blur of paperwork. With Evelyn's help, I sent the revocation letters. I set up new passwords. I called the insurance company and put a verbal password on my account that only I knew. It felt empowering. For the first time since the accident, I was doing something other than waiting to heal. I was building a fortress. Evelyn called me on a Tuesday. Good news and bad news. She said, give me the good news. I said, the insurance company has flagged the file. Evelyn said, they have stopped all negotiations with Marianne. They are resetting the settlement clock. You are safe from a surprise closure. And the bad news? They sent over the log of communications. Evelyn said, Leah, there is a request in here from 2 months ago. Before the accident. Before? I asked. Yes, it is a credit check inquiry. Marianne used your social security number to apply for a co-signed loan. She listed you as the guarantor. My breath caught in my throat. She tried to take out a loan in my name? It was denied. Evelyn said, because your debt-to-income ratio was too high with your student loans. But the attempt is there. This wasn't an impulse decision after the crash. She has been looking at you as a financial resource for months. I felt cold. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall. I thought about all the times in the last year Marianne had taken me to lunch, asked about my work, asked about my salary. "Oh, you are doing so well. Leah, I am so proud of you." She hadn't been proud. She had been appraising me. She had been calculating my net worth. That evening, I was sitting on the porch, watching the sun go down. Gordon was inside making dinner. My phone buzzed. It was an email, not a text. I opened it. The sender was Truth Teller. 88@securemail.com. A burner address. I opened the message. There was no subject line, just one sentence. "Ask your grandfather what he paid to keep your mother's name clean." I stared at the words. Ask your grandfather what he paid. Gordon had told me he paid off her debts. He said he paid $40,000, but the email implied something else, to keep her name clean. That wasn't just debt. That was scandal. That was reputation. It did not accuse me. It targeted Gordon. I looked through the window. Gordon was at the stove, stirring a pot of soup. He looked steady, reliable, the only person I could trust. But the email was precise. It was specific. And it changed the temperature of the entire situation. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a secret. A secret that someone was willing to use as a weapon. I looked at my grandfather, the man who had brought me toast and timed my medication. And I wondered what he had really done 10 years ago. And I wondered if protecting my mother's name had cost him more than just money. I turned off my phone. The crickets were starting to chirp in the twilight. I sat in the gathering dark, feeling the weight of the house behind me, and realized that the car accident was not the beginning of this story. It was just the moment the cracks finally broke open. The email from the anonymous sender sat on my phone screen like a dark star, pulling all the light out of the room. Ask your grandfather what he paid to keep your mother's name clean. It was a sentence that turned the air in the living room cold. Despite the fire Gordon had built in the hearth, I showed it to him. I did not say a word. I just handed him the phone. Gordon took it. He adjusted his glasses, squinting at the glowing text. He read it, and then he read it again. He did not gasp. He did not look shocked. He looked like a man who had been expecting a bill to arrive for 10 years. And here it finally was. He set the phone down on the coffee table. Face down. "I kept the records in the attic," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel shifting under a tire. "I suppose it is time we brought them down." We spent the next 2 days sitting at his heavy oak dining table. Surrounded by the smell of dust and old paper, the boxes were labeled in Gordon's neat, architectural handwriting. Taxes, 1998. Property deeds. M. Support. That last box was the heaviest. Inside, there was a chronological history of my mother's life, told not in photographs or diary entries, but in bank statements, canceled checks, and legal correspondence. It was an autopsy of a facade. As we sifted through the papers, a pattern emerged that made my stomach turn. I had always viewed my mother's life as a series of lucky breaks and impressive milestones. She would get a new, high-profile job. She would move to a better apartment. She would chair a committee. But the paper trail told a different story. Every time Marianne's life looked publicly perfect, there was a corresponding financial hemorrhage in Gordon's accounts. Here was a check for $5,000, dated 2 weeks before she bought her first luxury car. The memo line just said, "Loan." Here was a transfer for $8,000, dated the same month she hosted a lavish engagement party for a fiancé who vanished 6 weeks later. And then, deeper in the stack, we found the year of the Cedar Ridge Youth Arts Trust. I remembered that year. I was 22, just out of college. Marianne had been appointed to the board of the trust. It was a huge deal in Cedar Ridge. It meant you had arrived. She was in the local paper, smiling, holding a giant ceremonial check. She talked about it constantly. "We are expanding the program. Leah, we are bringing culture to the community." I pulled a thick file folder from the bottom of the box. It was clipped together with a rusted metal fastener. "What is this?" I asked. Gordon stopped sorting through a stack of receipts. He looked at the folder. He took a sip of his cold coffee. That was the near miss, he said. That was the one that almost destroyed her. I opened the folder. Inside were letters from a forensic accounting firm. There were spreadsheets with columns highlighted in angry red ink. She did not steal the money. Gordon said quietly, "Not in the way you think. She did not take it to buy shoes or vacations. She cooked the books. Leah, the trust was running a deficit, a big one. If the donors found out, the board would have been dissolved, and Marianne would have looked like a failure. She would have been the woman who crashed the most prestigious nonprofit in the county." I read the summary letter. Ms. Cox knowingly inflated donor pledge amounts to secure matching state grants. This constitutes fraud and misrepresentation of assets. She lied to make it look successful. I whispered, "She lied to make herself look successful." Gordon corrected, "She was the treasurer. It was her job to report the truth. Instead, she moved numbers around. She invented pledges from donors who had never agreed to give money, just to balance the ledger on paper so she could stand at the podium and announce a record-breaking year." I looked at the date on the final letter. It was a settlement agreement, repayment of $42,000 in unauthorized grant allocations, plus legal fees, in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement and immediate resignation from the board. "You paid it," I said. I looked at the check stapled to the back. It was signed by Gordon Cox, $42,000. "I paid it," Gordon said, "to keep her out of court, to keep her name out of the police blotter. She told me she just got in over her head. She said she was trying to fix it before anyone noticed. She cried. Leah. She sat in this very kitchen and told me she would never, ever put appearances above the truth again." He ran a hand over his face. He looked exhausted. "I believed her," he said. "Or maybe I just wanted to believe her. I told everyone she stepped down from the board to focus on her health. We lied together. I stared at the papers. The reality of it washed over me. My mother was not just a woman who was bad with money. She was a woman who was addicted to a specific version of herself, the version that was successful, admired, and in control, and she was willing to burn down anything, including the law, to keep that version alive. And now, 10 years later, I was the one burning. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The car accident, the hospital, my broken body. "She isn't abandoning me because I am too much work," I said. The words tasted like ash. "Grandpa, she isn't running away because she can't handle the caretaking." Gordon looked at me. "She is running away because of the scrutiny." I said, my voice rose. "Think about it. An accident means insurance adjusters. It means lawyers. It means a forensic look at my finances and anyone connected to me. If she has been using my identity, or if she has been moving money around again, my accident is a spotlight she cannot turn off." Gordon nodded slowly. "She is not afraid of your pain, Leah. She is afraid of your paperwork." The phone rang. It was Evelyn Marr's office. We put it on speaker. "I have something," Evelyn said. Her voice was crisp, but there was a tension in it that I hadn't heard before, "and you are not going to like it." "What is it?" I asked. "I got the full file from the insurance carrier." Evelyn said, "I had to threaten them with a bad faith lawsuit to get the internal notes. But they sent them over this morning. There is a flag on your settlement payout." "A secondary claimant inquiry. What does that mean?" Gordon asked. "It means someone contacted the insurance company to ask if your injury settlement could be garnished." Evelyn said, "They wanted to know if the payout would be subject to a pre-existing lien." "A lien?" I asked. "I do not have any liens. I have student loans. But they are current. The inquiry did not come from a bank." Evelyn said, "It came from a private holding company called Harbor Glen Finance. Does that name ring a bell?" I looked at Gordon. He shook his head. "No." I said, "Well," Evelyn said, "they seem to think they have a claim on your assets. Specifically, they referenced a guarantee signed by a Marianne Cox, listing your future assets as collateral for a high-risk bridge loan." "My future assets?" I asked. My voice squeaked. "How can you list someone's future assets?" "You cannot," Evelyn said. "Not legally, not without the person's consent. But if you are desperate, and you are dealing with predatory lenders who operate in the gray areas, you might try. Marianne likely told them she had a daughter with a large settlement coming, and she tried to use that promise to buy herself more time on a debt she already owes. The room went silent. The fire popped in the grate. She is selling my pain, I said. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. It was not hysteria. It was not paranoia. It was math. She owes money to bad people. I was in an accident. I am about to get a check. To her. I am not a daughter. I am a liquidity event. Evelyn, Gordon said. His voice was very low. What do we do? We document it. Evelyn said, This is fraud. Gordon, plain and simple. If she signed Leah's name, or if she represented herself as having authority over Leah's funds to secure a loan. That is criminal. Do we go to the police? I asked. Evelyn paused. That is the nuclear option, she said. Once you file a police report, you lose control of the outcome. The prosecutor takes over. Your mother could go to prison. Is that what you want? I looked at Gordon. He was staring at the check for $42,000. He looked like a man watching a house burn down, knowing he was the one who had provided the matches. Not yet, Gordon said. Not until we know everything. We hung up. Gordon stood up and walked to the window. The rain was coming down again, blurring the trees into gray smudges. I did this, he said softly. No, Grandpa. I said, You didn't. She did. I raised her. Leah, he said. He turned to face me. I taught her that appearances mattered. When she was a girl, if she made a mistake, I fixed it. If she broke something, I replaced it before your grandmother got home so she wouldn't be upset. I thought I was protecting her. I thought I was being a good father. He looked down at his hands. But I wasn't protecting her, he said. I was training her. I taught her that if she panicked enough, if she cried enough, the consequences would vanish. I taught her that reality was negotiable, and now she thinks she can negotiate with your life. He sounded so broken that I wanted to comfort him, but I couldn't move. My leg was throbbing, a deep, bone-level ache that radiated up into my spine. I need to go to my meeting, I said. Gordon looked up. Surprised. The support group? Yes, I said. I need to be in a room with people who tell the truth. The support group met in the basement of the community center. It was a circle of metal chairs filled with people who were taped together. There was a man who had lost an arm in a factory accident, a woman recovering from a stroke, and me, with my shattered hip and my shattered family. I sat next to Marisol Trent. Marisol was a former paralegal who had been T-boned by a drunk driver 2 years ago. She walked with a cane and had a gaze that could cut glass. She saw my face. You look like you saw a ghost, Marisol said. I saw a bank statement. I said, which is worse. During the sharing circle, I did not talk about the physical pain. I talked about the gaslighting. I talked about the text messages from my aunt, the rumors that I was unstable, the way my mother was rewriting history while I was trying to learn how to walk again. When the meeting broke up, Marisol grabbed my arm. You need a paper trail, she said. I have one. I said, my grandfather and I found the records. No, Marisol said, not for the past. For right now, for today, you need a recovery journal. She reached into her bag and pulled out a simple black composition notebook. Gaslighting works because it attacks your memory, Marisol said. It makes you doubt what you heard, what you saw, what you felt. You are on meds. You are in pain. You are vulnerable. Your mother knows that. She is counting on you getting confused. She pressed the notebook into my hand. Write it down, she commanded. Every single day, if she calls, write down the time and exactly what she said. If she doesn't call, write that down. Tuesday, no contact. If you hear a rumor she spread, write down who told you and when. Facts are the only antidote. Leah, when she tries to tell you that you are crazy, you open the book and you read the facts. It is your anchor. I took the notebook. It felt solid, heavy. Thank you, I said. Use it, Marisol said. And do not let her see it. That book is for you. It is the proof that you exist. When I got back to Gordon's house, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the notebook. On the first page, I wrote the date, October 14th, pain level, 6 out of 10. Contact from Mom. None. Discovery. Mom paid $42,000 to the Arts Trust in 2016 to cover up fraud. Grandpa paid it. Discovery. Mom tried to pledge my settlement to Harbor Glen Finance. Fact. I am not unstable. I am being targeted. Writing it down felt like driving a stake into the ground. It made the world stop spinning. 2 days later, the mail arrived. Since I had redirected my mail to Gordon's house, the flow of envelopes had been steady, medical bills, insurance updates, but this letter was different. It was from a bank I had never used. First Regional Bank of Cedar Ridge. It was addressed to Leah Cox, but underneath my name, it said, Care of Gordon Cox, Guarantor. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a notice of delinquency. Dear Ms. Cox, this letter is to inform you that the personal line of credit ending in 4492 is 60 days past due, as per the terms of the agreement. We are initiating collection procedures against both the primary borrower and the guarantor. Outstanding balance, $12,400. I stared at the numbers, $12,000. I walked into the living room. Gordon was reading the newspaper. Grandpa, I said, do you co-sign loans for Mom? Gordon lowered the paper. Not since the Arts Trust, he said. I told her I was done. I handed him the letter. He read it. His face went very pale. Then, a flush of red anger crept up his neck. He stood up and went to his desk. He pulled out a file. He flipped through it until he found a document. It was an old loan agreement from 5 years ago, a small personal loan he had co-signed for her to fix her roof. This was paid off, Gordon said. His voice was tight. She showed me the payoff letter 3 years ago. I looked at the delinquency notice again. Line of credit. She didn't close it. I said, she paid it down to 0. Showed you the letter, and then kept the line open, and now she has run it up again. $12,000. And because you are the guarantor, I said, looking at him, she is dragging you down with her. Gordon stared at the paper. He looked at his own name printed there. Gordon Cox, guarantor. It wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about my settlement. She was cannibalizing the entire family. She was eating the foundation of the house to feed the fire of her own panic. Gordon crumpled the letter in his fist. It was a sudden, violent motion that made me jump. He walked into the kitchen and threw the crumpled ball into the trash. Then he leaned against the counter, breathing hard. She is doing it to you. I said, just like she is doing it to me. Gordon turned around. The sadness was gone from his eyes. It was replaced by something cold and hard. It was the look of a man who realizes that the dog he raised has gone rabid, and there is only one thing left to do. I am done, Gordon said. He walked over to the table where the box of old records still sat. He closed the lid. I have spent my whole life trying to keep her secrets. He said, I thought I was saving the family's dignity, but there is no dignity in this. There is only rot. He looked at me. I am not going to pay this. Leah, I am not going to write a check to First Regional Bank to make this go away quietly. And I am not going to let her steal your settlement to pay off her sharks. What are we going to do? I asked. Gordon walked over to the phone. He picked up the receiver and dialed a number. Evelyn, he said, it is Gordon. I want you to file the papers. He paused, listening. No, Gordon said, not the revocation, the other thing we discussed, the trust restructuring. He looked at me as he spoke. Yes, Gordon said into the phone. I know it will cause a war. I am counting on it. I want her to come out of hiding. I want to force her into the light. He hung up. He came over to me and took my hands. His grip was firm. I promised you I would find out what was moved and hidden. He said, we found it. Now, I am going to make my move. If she wants to abandon this family when things get hard, fine. But I will no longer absorb the fallout privately. We are going to handle this in a way that forces accountability. He looked at the notebook Marisol had given me, sitting on the table. Write this down. Leah, he said. I opened the book. I picked up the pen. October 16th. Gordon said. Grandpa stopped paying for the silence. I wrote it down. The ink looked black and permanent on the white page. Grandpa stopped paying for the silence. I closed the book. Outside. The rain had stopped. The sky was still gray, but the air felt different. It felt charged. The waiting was over. The reckoning was about to begin. The document that detonated my family sat on Evelyn Marr's mahogany desk. It looked boring. It was 5 pages of thick, cream-colored bond paper, stapled in the corner, with a title that sounded like a sedative: Second Amendment to the Restated Lydia Cox Living Trust. It did not look like a weapon, but as I picked up the pen to witness Gordon's signature, I knew we were pulling the pin on a grenade. My grandmother, Lydia, had left a modest trust when she died 10 years ago. It was designed to be a safety net, a quiet fund invested in municipal bonds that generated a steady, reliable income for the last decade. The control of that trust had been shared. Gordon was the trustee, but the bylaws allowed for discretionary distributions to family members based on maintenance and support, a phrase that Marianne had interpreted as, whenever I need a new lease on a luxury SUV. Gordon was changing the definition. Effective immediately, the amendment locked the trust down. It directed all distributable income solely to the healthcare, rehabilitation, and housing stability of Leah Cox. It stripped the trustee of the power to make discretionary payments to any other beneficiary without the unanimous consent of a newly appointed oversight committee, which consisted of Evelyn and a bank officer. And in a paragraph that Evelyn had drafted with surgical precision, it formally removed Marianne Cox from any role as a successor trustee or advisor. Citing demonstrated conflict of interest and adverse financial conduct, it was lawful, it was careful, it was framed entirely around protecting a disabled granddaughter from third-party interference. But in the language of my family, it was a declaration of war. It cut off the supply line. I signed my name on the witness line. My hand was steady. Thanks to the notebook, I had read my entry from yesterday 3 times before we left the house. Fact: she owes $12,000. Fact: she tried to pledge my future. Gordon signed next. He pressed hard on the paper, the nib of the pen scratching audibly in the quiet office. That is it, Evelyn said. She stamped the document with a heavy thud. I will file this with the probate court and the bank this afternoon. The bank will freeze the old operating account within the hour. The next time Marianne tries to access the funds or use the trust as proof of assets for a loan, the door will be locked. Gordon stood up. He looked pale, but his jaw was set. She will know by tomorrow, he said. She will know by 5 o'clock. Evelyn corrected. The bank notifies all interested parties immediately when a beneficial interest is modified. Get ready. Leah. The silence is about to end. Evelyn was wrong. It did not take until 5 o'clock. At 4:30, I was sitting on Gordon's back porch, icing my knee. The air was crisp, smelling of burning leaves and approaching winter. My phone lay on the wicker table next to me. Face up. It lit up. Mom calling. I stared at it. For 3 weeks, I had begged the universe for this screen. I had prayed for it in the hospital bed. I had cried over the lack of it in my apartment. Now, looking at the name, I felt a surge of nausea that made my mouth water. I did not answer. The phone stopped ringing. 3 seconds later, it started again. Mom calling. I watched the screen pulse. It felt like watching a heart monitor on a dying patient. Except the patient was my childhood. It stopped. Then it started again. Gordon came out onto the porch. He held 2 mugs of tea. He saw the phone lighting up. He set the tea down and sat in the chair next to me. He did not tell me to answer it. He did not tell me to ignore it. He just sat there, witnessing the assault. The phone rang 7 times in 10 minutes. Then the text messages started. Pick up the phone. Leah, I am at the bank. There is a mistake with the account. Leah, this is an emergency. Call me. Did you know about this? Did he make you sign something? I am coming over. That last one made me reach for the notebook. I opened it to today's date, October 17th. Time, 4:45. Mom threatens to come over after 3 weeks of silence. Trigger, money cut off. I looked at Gordon. She says she's coming over. She is not. Gordon said, I changed the locks on the gate this morning. And if she climbs the fence, I will call the sheriff. He said it calmly. But I saw the tremor in his hands as he held his tea. He was a private man. The idea of calling the sheriff on his own daughter was a violation of every code he had lived by for 70 years. But he was doing it. The phone rang again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. Then I picked it up and listened. Her voice was high and jagged. Leah, honey, it's Mom. Listen, I don't know what Gordon has told you, but he is confused. He is getting old. Honey, he is making decisions that don't make sense. The bank manager told me I was removed from my own mother's trust. You have to call me. I need you to tell them you didn't agree to this. He is manipulating you because you are on those meds. Please, Leah, I am your mother. We don't let family do this to each other. I deleted the message. The next one came 10 minutes later. The tone had shifted. The honey was gone. You ungrateful little brat. I spent 3 days at that hospital. I handled your bills. I handled your life while you were lying there drooling. And this is how you repay me? You let him cut me out? Do you have any idea what this does to me? I have things set up. I have commitments. You need to fix this. Leah, call me right now, or I'm going to come down there and drag you out of that house. I saved that one. I looked at the notebook. Fact. She is more afraid of losing access than losing me. I typed a text back. It took me 5 minutes to write because my thumbs were shaking. I will not speak to you alone. If you want to talk, we will do it at Evelyn Marr's office with a mediator. Tuesday at 10. Do not come to the house. The response was immediate. I am not going to a lawyer to talk to my own daughter. That is ridiculous. We are meeting for coffee. Tomorrow. I did not reply. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb. For the next 2 days, the barrage continued. She called Gordon. She called my Aunt Carol. She even called Tessa at work, trying to get a message to me. She was like water trying to find a crack in a sealed room. She was frantic, but she had no leverage. The money was gone. The trust was locked. And for the first time in her life, her father was not writing a check to make the noise stop. On Monday afternoon, Evelyn called. She accepted. Evelyn said, She will be here tomorrow at 10. She is bringing a lawyer. Some guy from a strip mall firm in the next county. She says she wants to discuss the illegal seizure of family assets. Let her come. Gordon said, The conference room at Evelyn's office was lined with books that smelled like dust and authority. The table was long and polished to a shine that reflected our faces. I sat on one side, flanked by Gordon and Evelyn. My cane leaned against the table edge. Marianne arrived 12 minutes late. She burst into the room like a gust of wind. She was wearing a beige trench coat and dark sunglasses, which she took off with a theatrical sigh. She looked thinner than I remembered. Her face was drawn, the makeup a little too heavy around the eyes, as if she were trying to hide sleeplessness. She did not look at Gordon. She looked straight at me. Leah, she said. Her voice was trembling. Look at you. You look terrible. Are you eating? I am fine. Mom, I said. She moved to hug me, but Evelyn cleared her throat. Please take a seat. Ms. Cox, Evelyn said, we are here to mediate, not to socialize. Marianne froze. She looked at Evelyn with pure hatred. Then she sat down next to her lawyer, a man in a rumpled suit who looked like he wished he were anywhere else. Let us begin, Evelyn said. We are here to discuss the restructuring of the trust and the boundaries regarding Leah's recovery. Marianne slammed her hand on the table. It was a sharp, shocking sound. We are here because you stole my inheritance, she shouted. She pointed a manicured finger at Gordon. You had no right. That trust was for the family. You cut me out because you are angry that I have a life. You are punishing me. Gordon sat like a statue. He did not blink. The trust is for maintenance and support. Evelyn said calmly, Gordon, as trustee, Determined that the priority for support is the family member currently recovering from a catastrophic injury. The amendment stands. Marianne turned to me, her eyes filled with sudden, wet tears. Leah, please, she said. You know I was going to help you. I was moving money around to maximize it. I was going to invest it so we would both be safe. I handled all your paperwork at the hospital because I love you. I was trying to protect you. I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the panic fluttering in her throat. You rerouted my mail. I said. Marianne blinked. What? You changed my address to a P.O. box. I said. You took my hospital records without my permission. You told the insurance company to route settlement offers to a private email. Why? Marianne waved her hand dismissively. Because you were incapacitated. You were on morphine. Leah, I didn't want you stressing over bills. I was organizing them. So why didn't you give them to me when I came home? I asked. Why did you block the insurance adjuster? Because he was aggressive, Marianne cried. I was protecting you. And why did you tell Aunt Carol and my boss that I was unstable? I asked. Why did you tell everyone I was having a mental breakdown? The room went silent. Marianne's lawyer shifted in his seat. I didn't say that. Marianne stammered. I said you were emotional. Which you are. Look at this. You dragged your mother into a legal battle. That is not the behavior of a sane daughter. Evelyn opened a file folder. She pulled out a sheet of paper. Ms. Cox, Evelyn said, we have a sworn affidavit from the insurance adjuster. It states that you attempted to negotiate an early settlement on Leah's behalf 3 days after the accident. You told him that Leah was cognitively impaired and that you had power of attorney. You did not have power of attorney. Marianne went white. I was going to get it, she snapped. It was a formality. Evelyn pulled out another paper. And we have the inquiry from Harbor Glen Finance, Evelyn said. The air left the room. Marianne stopped moving. She stopped breathing. She stared at the paper in Evelyn's hand as if it were a gun. You tried to use Leah's settlement as collateral, Evelyn said. You listed a pending insurance payout that did not belong to you as security for a bridge loan to cover your personal debts. Marianne looked at her lawyer. He was studying the grain of the wood on the table. He knew. He knew he was sitting next to a fraud. It wasn't fraud, Marianne whispered. Her voice was different now. The shouting was gone. It was small and desperate. I wasn't going to keep it, she said. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Leah, you have to understand. It was survival math. I owe them. The interest. It compounds every day. They were going to call the board. They were going to call my clients. I just needed to show them I had liquidity coming. She leaned forward. I was going to borrow it. She said, just for a month. Once the settlement check cleared, I would have paid off the loan. And then I would have replaced the money in your account before you even noticed. I had a deal coming through in November. A big consulting gig. I would have paid you back with interest. You never would have known. I stared at her. I felt a complicated wave of emotions crashing over me. Disgust. Yes, but also a strange, terrible empathy. I could see the logic in her head. She didn't see herself as a thief. She saw herself as a juggler. She truly believed that if she could just keep the balls in the air for one more month, everything would be fine. But she had used me as one of the balls. You were gambling with my life. I said. My voice was quiet. I have a broken hip. Mom, I might not be able to work for a year. And you were going to take the money meant for my doctors and give it to a loan shark? I would have fixed it, she insisted. I always fix it. Not this time, Gordon said. We all turned to look at him. He had not spoken a word since the meeting began. He sat with his hands folded on the table. His face carved from sorrow. He looked at Marianne. You are 52 years old. Marianne, he said, and you are still waiting for me to come behind you with a broom. Daddy, please, Marianne said. She sounded like a child. They will destroy me. Harbor Glen. They are not like the bank. They will ruin my reputation. Your reputation, Gordon said. He shook his head slowly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the notebook. Not my notebook. His notebook. the small spiral-bound one he carried everywhere. He placed it on the table. "I have spent 40 years buying your reputation," Gordon said. "I paid for the car you wrecked in college. I paid for the credit cards you maxed out in your 20s. I paid $42,000 to the Arts Trust to keep you out of jail." Marianne flinched. Her lawyer looked up, eyes wide. "I thought I was helping," Gordon said. "I thought if I just cleared the path, you would eventually learn to walk straight. But you didn't. You just learned that the path would always be cleared." He looked at me, then back at her, and when I stopped paying, "You decided to use your daughter. You looked at her broken body in that hospital bed, and you didn't see a child who needed comfort. You saw a line of credit." "No!" Marianne sobbed. "That is not true. I love her. I was overwhelmed. I panicked." Gordon stood up. He leaned over the table. His voice dropped to a whisper, but it landed like a gavel in the center of the room. "You didn't abandon Leah because you were overwhelmed," Gordon said. "You abandoned her because she stopped being useful, and you came back only when you thought she could be harvested." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a truth so heavy it crushed everything else in the room. Marianne stared at him. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The mask of the victim, the manager, the concerned mother, it all slid off, underneath. There was just a terrified, selfish woman who had been cornered. She stood up. Her chair scraped violently against the floor. "Fine," she hissed. She gathered her coat. She grabbed her bag. She looked at me with cold, dead eyes. "You think you have won," she said. "You think you are so righteous. Leah, standing there with your notebook and your lawyer, and you, Dad, the saint of Cedar Ridge?" She walked to the door. Her lawyer scrambled to pack up his briefcase, muttering an apology to Evelyn. Marianne stopped with her hand on the knob. She turned back to Gordon. "You want to talk about reputation?" she said. Her voice was low and venomous. "You want to talk about secrets?" She laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. "If you humiliate me, Dad, if you let those sharks come after me and ruin my name, I will take you down with me. I will tell everyone what really happened years ago. I will tell them about the fire." Gordon went still. His face turned the color of ash. Marianne saw the hit land. She smiled. "Yeah," she said. "I know about that. I have known for a long time. So you better think carefully about how much accountability you really want." She slammed the door. The glass in the frame rattled. For a long time, no one moved. The echo of the slam hung in the air. I looked at Gordon. He was standing by the table, staring at the closed door. His hand was gripping the back of the chair so hard his knuckles were white. "Grandpa?" I whispered. He did not answer. He looked like a man who had just been shot but hadn't fallen yet. Evelyn took off her glasses. She looked from Gordon to me, her expression grave. "What fire?" I asked. Gordon closed his eyes. He took a deep, shuddering breath. "We are done for today," he said. His voice was hollow. He picked up his hat. He did not look at me. He walked out of the room, moving slowly, like an old man carrying a weight that had suddenly doubled. I sat there in the silence of the law library, the victory of the trust restructuring tasting like dust in my mouth. We had stopped Marianne from stealing my money. We had forced the truth into the light, but in the process, she had opened a door to a room I didn't know existed. I will tell everyone what really happened years ago. I will tell them about the fire. I reached for my notebook. I opened it to a fresh page. October 20th. Mediation. Mom removed from trust. She admitted the loan scheme, but she threatened Grandpa with a secret. I wrote one last line, pressing the pen so hard it tore the paper. What fire? The drive back from Evelyn Marr's office was quiet. It was not the peaceful silence of two people comfortable in each other's company. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a bomb squad truck transporting a live device. Gordon drove with both hands gripping the wheel at 10 and 2, his eyes fixed on the wet asphalt of Main Street. I sat in the passenger seat, my notebook open on my lap, staring at the last words I had written. What fire? Marianne's threat hung in the cab of the truck like smoke. I will tell them about the fire. She had thrown it like a grenade to cover her retreat. And judging by the color of Gordon's face, a pale, waxen gray, it had detonated exactly where she intended. We pulled into the driveway. Gordon turned off the engine, but he did not open his door. He just sat there, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. "Grandpa," I said. My voice sounded loud in the small space. "We need to talk about it." Gordon looked at the house. It was the house where he had raised Marianne, the house where he had tried to build a family based on order and reputation. "Not here," he said. He restarted the truck. We drove to the old industrial park on the edge of Cedar Ridge, a place of rusted warehouses and weeds pushing through cracked concrete. Gordon parked facing a chain-link fence. "It was not a moral failing," Gordon said. He spoke to the windshield. "That is what you need to understand. Leah, I did not do it because I was a bad man. I did it because I was a father." "What was the fire?" I asked. Gordon took a deep breath. 10 years ago, when the Arts Trust scandal happened, I told you I paid the money," he said. "I told you I wrote a check for $42,000 to cover the deficit Marianne created." That was true, but it was not the whole truth. He turned to look at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. "Money fixes the debt. Leah, it does not fix the crime." Marianne had cooked the books. She had created false invoices. She had forged signatures, even with the money repaid. If an auditor had looked at the physical ledgers, the actual paper trail, she would have gone to prison for fraud and forgery. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. "So what did you do?" I whispered. "I took the ledgers," Gordon said. "I told the board I needed to audit them myself before I wrote the check. I brought them home, and that night, in the burn barrel behind the garage, I burned them." I stared at him. My grandfather, the man who obeyed every speed limit, who returned extra change to cashiers, had committed a felony to save his daughter. "I watched them turn to ash," Gordon said. "And then I went back the next day and told the board the records had been lost in a water leak in my basement. They were so relieved to have the check, so desperate to avoid the scandal themselves, that they did not ask questions. They just wanted it over." He looked back at the fence. "Marianne stood at the back window and watched me burn them," he said. "She saw me strike the match, and that was the moment. Leah, that was the moment she learned that there is no problem so big that her father cannot incinerate it. She is threatening to report you." I said, "For destroying evidence." "Yes," Gordon said. "If I expose her now, if I let the world know she is a thief, she will tell the authorities I am one too." I reached across the console and took his hand. It was rough and cold. "She won't do it," I said, "because if she tells them about the fire, she admits there were crimes in those ledgers. She incriminates herself." Gordon squeezed my hand. "You are thinking like a rational person." "Leah," he said, "Marianne is not rational right now. She is a trapped animal, and a trapped animal will chew off its own leg to get free, or it will bite the hand that fed it." The next morning, I called Evelyn. I told her everything. I told her about the Arts Trust, the check, and the fire. Evelyn listened without interrupting. When I finished, the silence on the line was long. "Statute of limitations," Evelyn said finally. "What?" I asked. "The statute of limitations for obstruction of justice or destruction of evidence in a non-capital case in this state is 6 years. Evelyn said, "The Arts Trust incident was 10 years ago." I felt the air rush back into my lungs. "You mean she can't hurt him?" I asked. "She can hurt his reputation," Evelyn said. "She can embarrass him at the Rotary Club, but she cannot put him in jail. And frankly, if she admits to the underlying fraud that necessitated the fire, she opens herself up to civil liability that might still be actionable depending on when the fraud was discovered. She is bluffing. Leah, it is a terrifying bluff, but it is empty." I sat at the kitchen table, watching Gordon out in the yard. He was raking leaves, his movements slow and mechanical. He didn't know yet. He was still living in the prison Marianne had built for him. "We need to see the files." I told Evelyn, I want to see every piece of paper connected to the arts trust that still exists. I want to know exactly what she is terrified of. We spent the afternoon at the county clerk's office and the library, digging through archived filings. The trust was a registered nonprofit, so their tax filings were public. We found it in the footnotes of the 2016 filing. A small, dry sentence referencing an internal adjustment of assets due to clerical reporting inconsistencies. And then we found something else, a reference to an internal report prepared by the board's secretary, a woman named Janice Miller, which had been sealed by the board's vote. Gordon and I sat in Evelyn's conference room later that day. Evelyn had tracked down Janice Miller. She was retired now, living in Florida. I spoke to Janice. Evelyn said, "She remembers everything. She says she kept a copy of her report. She didn't trust the board to keep it safe." "What is in it?" Gordon asked. "Details." Evelyn said, "It wasn't just inflating donor pledges. Gordon, Marianne was using the trust's credit card for personal expenses, travels, clothes, dinners. She was listing them as donor cultivation events. The report details $12,000 in personal spending disguised as charity work." Gordon closed his eyes. "I didn't know about the credit card." He whispered, "She told me it was just the grant numbers. She lied to you." I said, "Even while you were burning the evidence to save her, she was lying to you about what you were burning." I looked at my grandfather. The pedestal he had placed Marianne on had been crumbling for weeks, but now it was dust. He wasn't her savior. He was her mark. She learned a dangerous lesson. I said, "She learned that if she panics, someone, especially you, will clean it up." And now, with my settlement in view, she tried to recreate the same pattern. She created a mess with Harbor Glen Finance, and she decided I was going to be the one to clean it up. Gordon nodded. He looked older, but his eyes were clear. "She thinks I am still that man," he said. "She thinks I am still the man with the match." The social assault began 2 days later. It started with a phone call from my cousin Sarah. Sarah was Marianne's niece on her father's side, a woman who lived 2 towns over and communicated primarily in inspirational quotes and passive-aggressive concern. "Leah," Sarah said. Her voice was dripped in syrup. "I am just calling because, well, the family is talking." "Talking about what?" I asked. I put the phone on speaker and opened my notebook. October 22nd. Call from cousin Sarah. "Flying monkey. We are worried about you." Sarah said, "Marianne called me in tears. She says you have cut her off. She says you are under a lot of influence from Grandpa, and that you are not thinking clearly because of the pain medication. I am not on pain medication anymore." "Sarah," I said, "I switched to ibuprofen last week." "Oh," Sarah said. She sounded disappointed. "Well, Marianne says you are confused. She says you are accusing her of things that never happened. Leah, she is your mother. She was at the hospital every day. How can you treat her like a criminal?" I looked at the notebook. Fact. Marianne tried to pledge my settlement to a loan shark. "Sarah," I said, my voice was calm. "Did Mom tell you that she owes $12,000 to a predatory lender?" Silence. "Did she tell you she tried to use my insurance settlement as collateral for that loan without my knowledge?" No," Sarah stammered. "She said there was a misunderstanding about some paperwork." "It wasn't a misunderstanding." I said, "It was theft." "Leah, that is a harsh word." Sarah said, "It is the correct word." I said, "And if you want to take her side, that is your choice. But do not call me and tell me I am confused. I have never been clearer." I hung up. I sat there for a moment, feeling the adrenaline vibrate in my chest. I had won the argument. I had countered with facts. But then the anger drained away, and I was left with a deep, hollow ache. I put my head down on the table and cried. I wasn't crying for Marianne. I was crying for the mother I wanted. I was crying for the mother Sarah thought existed, the one who was at the hospital every day, the one who sacrificed, the one who loved me. That mother was a fiction. She was a character Marianne played when the audience was watching. The social cost of telling the truth was high. It meant destroying the comfortable lie that kept the family together. It meant being the villain in everyone else's story, so I could be the hero in my own. That evening, Tessa came over. She brought a pizza and a folder of internet printouts. "I found him," Tessa said. She slapped a photo on the coffee table. It was a grainy picture from a LinkedIn profile. It was the man from the cafe, the one with the slicked-back hair. "His name is Marcus Vane," Tessa said. "He lists himself as a venture capital consultant. But look at this." She laid out another sheet. It was a forum thread from a consumer protection website. "Warning: Harbor Glen Finance also operates as Vane Capital. Predatory lending. They target people with bad credit and assets in probate. Interest rates of 40%. They use intimidation tactics. He is a shark," Tessa said. "A real one." I looked at the photo. Marcus Vane looked like a man who smiled with too many teeth. "Your mom didn't just borrow money," Tessa said. "She got in bed with people who break legs. That's why she was so desperate. That's why she was arguing with him." I showed the photo to Gordon. "Have you seen him?" I asked. Gordon nodded grimly. "That is the man who called the house. The one who said he knew where we lived. It wasn't just debt. I realized. It was a trap. Marianne had borrowed money she couldn't pay back, counting on the big consulting deal she mentioned. When the deal fell through, or never existed, she had panicked, and then I had crashed my car. And suddenly, she saw a way out. She wasn't just greedy. I said, she was terrified. "Does that change anything?" Gordon asked. "No." I said, "It just explains the desperation. It explains why she was willing to sacrifice me. I was the life raft." Gordon looked at the photo of Marcus Vane. "We should go public," he said. "We should take this to the police, get a restraining order against Vane and Marianne, blow the whole thing open." I looked at Evelyn, who had come over to review the file. She shook her head. "Truth is powerful," Evelyn said, "but blunt exposure can backfire. If you go to the police now, Vane goes underground. He sells the debt to someone worse, and Marianne. If you back her into a corner publicly, she will detonate everything. She will sue you for defamation. She will drag this out in court for years. Your settlement money will be eaten up by legal fees." "So what do?" I asked. "We use the scalpel, not the hammer," Evelyn said. "We document everything. We secure your settlement, and we let her starve." "Starve?" "We cut off the supply," Evelyn said. "The trust is locked. The insurance is locked. She cannot get to your money. Vane will realize she has no access. He will stop viewing her as a payday and start viewing her as a liability. He will move on. Sharks don't hunt where there is no blood." 3 days later, a package arrived. It was a large cardboard box, taped shut with excessive care. There was no return address, but I knew the handwriting. I sat on the living room floor and opened it. The smell hit me first. It was the smell of my childhood bedroom, lavender sachets and old paper. Inside, there were treasures. My first pair of ballet slippers, the pink satin worn at the toes, a photo album of our trip to Cape Cod when I was 10, both of us smiling. Sunburnt and happy, a stuffed bear named Mr., paws that I had slept with until college, and a note. It was written on heavy stationery. In her looping, elegant script. "My dearest Leah, I found these in the attic and I just sat and cried for an hour. Do you remember the Cape? We were so happy then. I know things are hard right now. I know I have made mistakes. I am not perfect. Leah, but everything I have ever done, I have done because I want you to have the best life possible. I miss you. I miss us. Please, let's put the lawyers away. Let's just be mother and daughter again. I want to help you through this settlement. I want to be there for you. Love, Mom." I felt a lump form in my throat. It was a physical ache. I touched the ballet slippers. I remembered that trip. I remembered her laughing as we built a sandcastle. Maybe she really was sorry. Maybe the panic had passed. I reached for the photo album. As I lifted it, a piece of paper fluttered out from between the pages. It fell onto the floor. Face up. It was a form. Authorization for third-party assistance with settlement disbursement. It was already filled out. Marianne's name was typed in the designated line for assistant. All it needed was my signature. The lump in my throat vanished. It was replaced by a coldness so absolute it felt like my blood had stopped moving. She hadn't sent the box because she missed me. She hadn't sent the slippers because she was nostalgic. She had sent them to soften me up. She had weaponized my own childhood memories to get me to sign a piece of paper. I looked at the bear. Mr. Paws? He didn't look like a friend anymore. He looked like bait. I picked up the form. I read the fine print. This authorization grants the assistant the right to communicate with the settlement administrator and facilitate the transfer of funds. She was still trying. She was still pushing. She truly believed that if she just pressed the right emotional button, I would hand over the keys to my life. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the box across the room. I felt clear. I realized then that healing wasn't just about my leg knitting back together. It wasn't just about learning to walk without a cane. Healing was learning not to beg for love from someone who used love as a tool. I took the form. I walked to the kitchen, my cane tapping a steady rhythm on the floor. Gordon was drinking coffee. She sent a box, I said. He looked at the form in my hand. What is that? The price tag, I said. I tore the form in half, then in quarters. I dropped the pieces into the trash can. I am done, I said. The next morning, Evelyn called. Her voice was tight. We have a problem, she said. What is it? I asked. The settlement conference is set for the 10th, Evelyn said. But a contested issue has been added to the docket. Contested by who? By Marianne, Evelyn said. She filed a motion this morning. She is formally challenging your competency to manage the settlement funds. I gripped the phone. On what grounds? She claims you are medically impaired due to head trauma from the accident and subsequent narcotic use. Evelyn said, she has submitted an affidavit stating that you are exhibiting paranoid behavior and are being unduly influenced by an estrangement from your primary caregiver, her. She is asking the court to appoint her as the conservator of the settlement. I stared at the wall. She is trying to declare me incompetent? I asked. My voice was a whisper. Yes, Evelyn said. She is trying to take away your legal right to your own money. She is saying you are too broken to be an adult. She isn't asking for permission anymore. She is trying to take it by force. My hands started to shake. I looked down at them. They were shaking hard. But this time, it wasn't fear. It wasn't the trembling of a victim. It was fury. She wanted a fight? She wanted to stand in front of a judge and argue that I was broken? Let her try. I said, Leah? Evelyn asked. Let her try. I repeated. My voice was steady now, cold as ice. I looked at the notebook on the table, the record of every lie, every manipulation, every theft. She thinks I am broken. I said, she thinks I am the little girl who needs her to fix everything. I picked up the pen. I am going to show her exactly who she raised. The morning of the settlement conference did not feel like a battle. It felt like a funeral. The sky over Cedar Ridge was a bruised purple, heavy with clouds that refused to rain, and the air was thick with a damp, clinging cold. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom at Gordon's house. I was wearing a charcoal suit I hadn't worn since a client presentation 6 months ago. It hung a little loose on my frame now. My body had changed. The muscle in my right leg had atrophied, leaving me thinner, sharper. But as I buttoned the jacket, I didn't see a victim. I saw someone who had survived the crash, and then survived the rescue. I picked up the file on the dresser. It was thick. Inside were letters from my physical therapist. Sarah. Attesting to my attendance and progress, there was a report from my neurologist, stating clearly that my cognitive functions were intact. My memory was sharp, and I was fully capable of making financial and legal decisions. And there was my notebook, the black composition book Marisol had given me. Gordon knocked on the doorframe. He was wearing his Sunday suit, a navy blue wool that smelled of cedar and mothballs. He held his hat in his hands. Are you ready? He asked. I don't know. I said, I am nervous. Good, Gordon said. Nerves mean you are paying attention. He walked over and handed me my cane. It wasn't the ugly hospital issue aluminum one anymore. He had carved me a new one out of hickory. sanded smooth and stained a deep, rich brown. It felt solid in my hand. A weapon. A support. "She is going to try to break you in there." "Leah," Gordon said. "She is going to say things that hurt. She is going to try to make you feel small." "I know." I said, "Just remember," Gordon said, "you are not the version of yourself she keeps in her head. You are the woman standing right here." The conference room at the mediation center was neutral ground. Beige walls, beige carpet, a long oval table that seemed designed to keep people as far apart as possible. On one side sat the insurance company representatives, two men in gray suits with laptops and bored expressions. In the middle sat the court-appointed mediator, a retired judge named Mr. Henderson, who looked like he had seen every possible variation of human greed and was unimpressed by all of them. Evelyn, Gordon, and I took the seats on the left. Marianne arrived last. She did not come alone. She walked in flanked by her lawyer and another man I didn't recognize, a silver-haired man with a stethoscope around his neck, wearing a white coat over his suit. It was a costume. He was there to look like medical authority. Marianne looked immaculate. She wore a soft blue dress that made her look maternal, fragile, and deeply concerned. She carried a tissue in her hand, already balled up as if she had been crying in the car. She looked at me, and her face crumpled into a tragic smile. "Leah," she breathed. "Oh, honey, you look so tired." I did not smile back. I sat very still, my hands folded on the table, my cane resting against my leg. "Let us begin." "Mister," Henderson said. He opened a file. "We are here to finalize the settlement regarding the accident on September 12th. However, we have a motion filed by Ms. Marianne Cox contesting the claimant's competency to manage the funds. Ms. Cox, you may proceed." Marianne's lawyer stood up. He was slicker than the one she had brought to Evelyn's office. He spoke with a smooth, baritone confidence. "Your Honor," he began, addressing the mediator, "this is a tragedy. We have a young woman, Leah Cox, who has suffered a catastrophic physical trauma. But the damage goes beyond the skeletal fractures. We have observed a disturbing pattern of paranoia, erratic decision-making, and emotional instability since the accident." He gestured to the man in the white coat. "Doctor, Aris here has reviewed the case file, while he has not treated Leah personally. His professional opinion is that the combination of head trauma and heavy narcotic pain management has created a state of temporary cognitive impairment. Leah believes her own mother is stealing from her. She believes there are conspiracies involving her mail. These are classic symptoms of persecution mania induced by trauma." Marianne let out a small, choked sob. She dabbed her eyes. "I just want to protect her," Marianne whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I just want to make sure the money is there for her care. She is not herself right now. She is pushing away the only people who love her." For a second, just a heartbeat, I felt the old reflex kick in, the doubt. I looked at Marianne's tear-stained face. She looked so sincere. She sounded so heartbroken. Maybe I am wrong. A voice in my head whispered, maybe I'm reacting too strongly. Maybe the pain meds did mess up my thinking. Maybe she really is just trying to help. It was the gaslighting, taking root in the soil of my insecurity. Then I looked at Gordon. He was not looking at Marianne. He was looking at me. His expression was not pity. It was expectation. He was waiting for me to stand up. I took a breath. I reached for the pitcher of water on the table and poured myself a glass. My hand did not shake. I looked at Evelyn. She nodded. Evelyn stood up. She did not use big words. She did not use a smooth baritone voice. She used paper, Mr. Mediator. Evelyn said, "We appreciate the mother's concern. However, allegations of incompetence require proof, not just stories, and we have proof of a very different narrative." She slid a stack of documents across the table to Mr. Henderson. "Exhibit A," Evelyn said, "a report from Leah's neurologist, dated 2 days ago. It confirms 0 cognitive decline. Leah scored perfect marks on memory and logic tests. She is not confused. She is precise." She slid another paper. "Exhibit B." Evelyn said. A timeline of events. On September 16th, 4 days after the accident, the claimant's mail was rerouted to a P.O. box registered to Marianne Cox. This was done without Leah's consent. Is noticing that your mail is missing an act of paranoia, or is it an observation of fact? Marianne stiffened. Exhibit C. Evelyn continued. A log of authorized users on Leah's bank accounts. Marianne Cox attempted to add herself as a signatory on September 20th. The bank denied the request because Leah's signature on the form did not match the signature on file, because Leah did not sign it. Evelyn looked at the doctor in the white coat. Doctor, Eris, Evelyn said, in your professional opinion, is it a symptom of mania to lock your bank account when someone is trying to forge your signature? The doctor shifted in his seat. He looked at Marianne's lawyer. Without examining the patient. Thank you, Evelyn said, cutting him off. She turned back to the mediator. This is not a case of a confused daughter. Evelyn said, this is a case of a solvent daughter and an insolvent mother. Marianne Cox is not here because she is worried about Leah's mind. She is here because she has debts that Leah's settlement can pay. Lies, Marianne shouted. The mask slipped. The soft, maternal blue dress suddenly seemed to shrink against the sharpness of her rage. She stood up, her hands gripping the table. How dare you, Marianne hissed. I have taken care of her my whole life. I have sacrificed everything. And now you drag my name through the mud? I don't need her money. I have my own money. Mr. Henderson looked at her over his glasses. Please sit down. Ms. Cox, I have a reputation in this town, Marianne yelled. She was losing control. The panic was rising, bubbling up through the cracks in her performance. I am a respected consultant. I sat on the board of the Youth Arts Trust. Gordon flinched at the name. At that moment, the insurance representative cleared his throat. Mr. Henderson? The representative said. Yes. We have a piece of information relevant to the competency claim, the representative said. He tapped his laptop. Marianne froze. She looked at the man in the gray suit. On October 2nd, the representative said, our call center received a request regarding the settlement payout instructions. The caller identified herself as Leah Cox. She provided the correct social security number and date of birth. I looked at the representative. I never called you. I said, we know. The representative said, because the voice on the recording did not match the voice on your previous recorded statements, and because the routing number provided for the wire transfer did not belong to Leah Cox. He turned the laptop screen so the room could see. It was a bank account number. We ran a trace on the account. The representative said, it belongs to a holding company called Harbor Glen Finance. The room went dead silent. Harbor Glen Finance, the loan sharks. Marianne had not just tried to borrow against the settlement. She had tried to impersonate me on the phone and have the insurance company wire the money directly to the men who were threatening her. She wasn't panicking. She was executing a heist. Marianne stood there, her mouth slightly open. She looked at the laptop screen. She looked at the mediator. She looked at her lawyer, who was slowly closing his folder, signaling that he was done. It was a mistake, Marianne whispered. I must have read the wrong number. I was stressed. She turned to me. Leah, please, she said. Her voice broke. You know I wouldn't do that. You know I wouldn't steal from you. I was just trying to set up a safe place for the money. She was pleading now, begging me to step back into the role she had written for me. The confused, dependent daughter who believed whatever Mommy said. I looked at her, and I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The fear was gone. There was just a cold, hard clarity. Gordon stood up. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a large, manila envelope. It was sealed with red wax. Your Honor, Gordon said. His voice was low, filled with a sadness that seemed to fill the room. I have one final document to submit. Marianne saw the envelope. Her eyes went wide. She knew what was inside. She recognized the wax seal. It was from his personal safe. Dad. No, she whispered. This is a sworn affidavit. Gordon said to the mediator. It details the restructuring of the Lydia Cox Family Trust, but attached to it is an addendum. It is a history of financial conduct regarding Marianne Cox, dating back 10 years. He placed the envelope on the table. It includes the canceled check for $42,000 to the Cedar Ridge Youth Arts Trust, Gordon said, and it includes a copy of the internal report from that board, detailing the fabrication of financial records. Marianne made a sound like a wounded animal. You can't, she hissed. You can't show them that. You destroyed it. You burned it. I burned the ledgers, Gordon said calmly. I did not burn the truth. He looked at the mediator. This document establishes a pattern. Gordon said, a pattern of financial desperation followed by falsification of documents. It proves that the motion before you today is not about Leah's competency. It is the latest chapter in a long story of a mother who views her family as a resource to be harvested. He pushed the envelope toward the center of the table. I submit this to the record, Gordon said. Unless the motion is withdrawn. The room held its breath. Marianne looked at the envelope. If Mr. Henderson opened it, it would become a matter of public record. The Arts Trust scandal would be out. Her reputation, the only currency she had left, would be incinerated. She looked at Gordon. She saw the look in his eyes. He wasn't bluffing. He had finally put down the match and picked up the gavel. Withdraw it, Marianne muttered. What? Her lawyer asked. Withdraw the motion, she screamed. Her voice cracked, shrill and ugly. I withdraw the claim. She is competent. Fine. She is fine. She collapsed back into her chair. She put her face in her hands. Mr. Henderson nodded. The motion is withdrawn. We will proceed with the settlement approval in favor of Leah Cox, with no conservatorship. The insurance representatives began typing. Evelyn began sorting papers for signatures, but it wasn't over. Marianne lifted her head. Her makeup was smeared. She looked at me, and for the first time, her eyes were stripped of all the artifice. There was no calculation left, just a raw, terrifying honesty. I wasn't just scared of the debt, she whispered. I looked at her. What? I asked. I wasn't just scared of Harbor Glen. She said, she sounded like she was talking to herself. When you got hurt. When I saw you in that bed. You looked so small. You needed me. For the first time in 10 years. You really needed me. She laughed. A wet, jagged sound. I thought, this is it, she said. She can't leave now. She can't walk away. She needs me to handle everything. She looked at me with a hunger that turned my stomach. I wanted you to be dependent. Leah, she said, because if you are dependent, I am necessary. And if I am necessary, you can't see the rest of it. You can't see that I am drowning. You can't see that I am a failure. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I was terrified that you would get better. She said, because I knew the second you could walk, you would walk away, and I would be alone with the mess I made. It was the most horrifying thing she had ever said, and it was the only true thing she had said in months. She hadn't tried to steal the money just to pay the debt. She had tried to steal my agency. She wanted to keep me broken because a broken daughter is a permanent audience. She wanted to be the nurse, the savior, the gatekeeper, because as long as she was controlling my life, no one would look closely at hers. I felt a wave of nausea. I stood up. I picked up my cane. I walked around the table until I was standing in front of her. She looked up at me, expecting, what? Forgiveness? Anger? I looked down at her. I am not your mirror. Mom, I said. She blinked. I am not here to reflect the version of yourself you want to see. I said, I am not your second chance. I am not your liquidity, and I am certainly not your patient. I leaned in closer. You are right. I said, I am walking away, but not because I don't need help. I am walking away because the help you offer costs too much. It costs me my reality. I straightened up. I will not authorize any representation. I said to the room, I will not privately negotiate any money with my mother, and I will not trade my silence for her love. My voice shook on the last word, but I did not back down. Marianne stared at me. She looked at the confident woman standing with the hickory cane. She looked at the daughter she had tried to erase, and she realized she had failed. She stood up. She did not look at Gordon. She gathered her coat, pulling it tight around her as if she were suddenly freezing. "Fine," she said. Her voice was flat, dead. She didn't scream. She didn't threaten to tell secrets. She just looked empty. The costume of the good mother had finally weighed too much to carry, and she had dropped it on the floor. She walked to the door. She opened it, and the sounds of the office hallway drifted in. Phones ringing, people talking, the mundane sounds of a world that didn't know our tragedy. She stepped out, and the door clicked shut behind her. The rest of the meeting was just paperwork. I signed the release. I signed the wire transfer instructions, confirming my own account, the one I had secured with a new password only I knew. I shook hands with the insurer. I shook hands with the mediator. When we walked out of the building, the sun had come out. It was that sharp, bright autumn light that makes everything look crisp and defined. The wet pavement shone like silver. Gordon walked beside me. He moved a little slower than he used to. The weight of the affidavit, the weight of the confrontation, had taken something out of him, but he looked lighter, too. We stood by his truck. "It is done," Gordon said. "Yes," I said. "It is done." He looked at me. "What will you do now?" he asked. I looked at the check in my bag. It was enough to pay my medical bills. It was enough to finish rehab. It was enough to put a down payment on a small house, one with no stairs, one that was mine. "I am going to heal." I said, "For real this time." "And the debt?" Gordon asked. "Marianne's debt?" "That is hers." I said, "Harbor Glen is her problem. The Arts Trust is her history. I am not paying for it anymore, and neither are you." Gordon nodded. He looked at the horizon. "I am proud of you." "Leah," he said. I looked at my grandfather, the man who had made one move, the man who had stopped the silence. "I didn't do it alone," I said. I got into the truck. I put my cane in the back seat. I opened my notebook one last time. October 30th. Settlement approved. Mom left. I am free. I closed the book. I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need to write down the facts to prove I existed. I knew I existed. I turned to Gordon. "Let's go home." "Grandpa," I said, "I am hungry for lunch." He smiled. It was a real smile, reaching his eyes. "I know a place," he said. He started the engine, and we drove away from the mediation center, away from the lies, and into a future that didn't require anyone's permission but my own. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It has been a journey walking in Leah's shoes, from the crash to the courtroom, and I hope her fight for truth resonated with you. Family betrayal is a heavy burden, but the strength to stand up for yourself is the ultimate victory. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop a comment below sharing your city or country. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode. And please, share your thoughts in the comments in English. What did you think of Gordon's one move? Did Marianne get what she deserved? I read every single comment, and I can't wait to hear what you think. Until next time, stay strong.